So before I was building Inference Saver, before I was building AI systems, before I was being anything other than just being straight up him when it comes to being a software developer, I actually had a different business. And before I had any of that, I had a real CRM strategy. So picture this here. I was building a company in China. I know, intimidating. I went there on a whim and I was one of those people who were like, well, you know what, I'll go over there and I'll make it work. When I was in China, the immediate problem to me was deal flow. I needed to know which companies we should approach. Okay, so I was scraping a lot of the information just off of Google Maps. I was using Google SERP. I was just doing all these different strategies to be able to pull in information about cafes in North America. Now, there's a lot of coffee shops in America, right? It's one of the biggest places for coffee. But there was a fit when I was looking for these people. And what I had already learned about them and what I needed to know to be able to take next actions was just to build a big contact list and trying to get the names of the people who actually own the shops. When you call up one of these numbers, right, of a person who owns a coffee shop, and trust me, this is going somewhere, it's usually going to be the person who's working there. The owner isn't usually going to be there, but sometimes they would. So I'd be sitting there on the phone all day, calling and talking to people who are baristas. It made no sense for me to be speaking to people who are baristas when I should be speaking to the owners. Okay, so I had a big contact list, but I had store names, email addresses, but it couldn't really tell me the reason behind it worked. It was just pray and dial, pray and dial. So that was the first version of the problem. I spent a very long time with a lot of different businesses I had done in the past. So I now have a new set of problems here. How does a small founder-led company keep its commercial context while the business is still changing? I did not have the full answers yet. But what I did learn quickly was the fact that the business needed a process so I could inspect rather than another collection of disconnected contacts. So the failure was not that we lacked names. The fear was that a name alone could not explain the work. The use of record had to connect the company with its communication, tasks, evidence, and the next decision. I needed to preserve why a company matched the sourcing offer, whether anyone had contacted, what came back, who was responsible for the follow-up, and when those facts lived in separate spreadsheets, inboxes, and conversations, every next step required reconstructing the history. So sometimes I'd approach people on Instagram. Sometimes I'd approach people just from Google. Sometimes I'd just send out SMSs. Sometimes I'd just call them. And I was doing a lot of volume every day, trying to contact as many of these business owners as possible, because what I was doing, I was selling plastic cups. Unflattering, unsexy, but people were buying them and they're buying them in large amounts. I was in China, I could give them a product for cheaper, and because I could give them that product for cheaper, it made sense. It's the same thing of what I'm doing with Inference Saver. I'm basically building an API AI gateway platform. Inside of it, you're able to get access to frontier models for cheaper prices. So the same idea translates across from selling paper cups to selling cheaper access to AI models. The contacts, the founders, the people who are out there, they're in all these different places like Twitter, Instagram, they're going to be on Facebook, they're going to be on Google, they're going to be everywhere. But if you have all of these people who are all over the place, it's going to be an absolute head wreck for you to do mass outreach, which is what I specialize in, and contacting these people and having it consistent, having a history, understanding why they're in my CRM and why they're there. So every step required reconstructing the history. The company could not compare one targeting decision with another because their reasoning would disappear. So if the reasoning is disappearing after the list was created, that made the requirement clear. Commercial context had to survive the tool and the person who created it first. So once the context became durable, research, qualification, contact, replies, and follow-up could operate as one visible process. I could have a repeatable process. And that outbound chain exposed the real operating problem that I was living through. If research lives in a spreadsheet, outreach lives in an inbox, and a follow-up lives in a founder's memory, the company cannot explain why one project moved forward while another disappeared. A useful CRM has to connect those stages. It should preserve why a target was selected, what's happened already, what state the relationship is in, who owns the next action, and that also makes automation safer. An agent, an AI agent, like the ones that I've got an Inference Saver here, those there are exactly like that. But they live in a different world. They're not like a human. A human can know who they spoke to, an agent will only remember their context. So, an agent can work from a visible business state instead of relying on private conversation context. but even the best processes cannot rescue per targeting. I was spraying and praying. The qualify of the outreach still begins with the quality of the research entering the system. So the next step was to make a selection evidence part of the record. That led to a second requirement. A prospect could not enter the pipeline as an unexplained row. The record needed to retain the business relationship and the reason it was there. The company, its domain, the discovery source, the segment, the evidence we found, and the workflow history that followed. Otherwise, we could see that outreach happened without being able to evaluate the decision that caused it. Keeping selection evidence on the record made the process measurable. We can compare the original hypothesis with replies, meetings, and later outcomes instead of treating every exported list as a fresh start. That changed how I evaluated a customer relationship management software. The question was no longer how many sales features is advertised. The question was whether it's an operating model could preserve our reasoning while the company and its process continued to change. When I started with cups, the original idea was just to contact people who were selling coffee. That went from coffee to acai bowls into smoothies, smoothies into burritos, and it changed. A lot of people need a lot of disposable things like paper cups, plastic cups. You need to get a burrito bowl. The product changed. The person you're contacting is different. Some of these businesses you can actually measure how likely it is I'm going to speak to the owner and how unlikely it is for me to speak to the owner. And by different segments, although they're buying the same things, the likelihood of contacting and getting a successful sale always could change. And it's the same thing whenever you're building an AI gateway platform. Founders are out there, they're in your niche, but they're in different places and they live in their own isolated silos. The bundle machine on the screen is the appeal for an agency CRM in one image, okay? Capture forms, calendars, conversations, nurture, and automation arrives as part of one product. So I have this friend, my friend's called Martin. Martin runs a marketing agency and he introduced me to this software called Go High Level. Now, Go High Level is one of them platforms, the AI powered business operating system. They all like to say the same terminology, but we can actually look at what it is. Go High Level is a good choice. Go High Level is a good choice if you want a broad amount of things. It's not good if you're trying to do hyper specific things. You'd rather have specific domain understanding of a specific problem and allow it to be configurable. See, this is the thing with this CRM, this Go High Level stuff, right? For an agency whose commercial motion matches those defaults, the bundle is a real advantage, okay? So a CRM could coordinate acquisition and follow-up instead of passively storing contacts, right? That's good for my friend Martin. I am not in the same situation here. I don't need those things out of the box. So the open question was whether our company should conform to a finished operating model or own a system that could keep changing with our research, products, and with the agents that are developing. I've been really early on with AI agents since maybe 2 years ago. So me understanding how this technology works and finding something that fits me as a founder now means that I need to sit there and weigh up these things before I can say, $160 a month is good for paying for this. That's a question that you need to sit there as a founder and ask yourself. So on the next slide, we're going to explain and look at Go High Level's own page so the comparison is grounded in how the product actually presents itself. So Go High Level gave a much broader picture of what a CRM could be. Its product is organized around 4 commercial verbs: capture, nurture, close, reactivate. For an agency or a marketer, that's a coherent operating model. Forms, calendars, conversations, follow-ups, automation, and client growth sit inside one broad bundle. Okay, so this means that there's less assembly before the team can start working. That is the genuine strength, and it is why I took the platform seriously. The limitation was not that the product lacked features, right? It was that our company also needed custom business objects, internal knowledge, model health, developer tools, and services we control. Go High Level helped me understand the all-in-one agency model. Close helped me understand the value of choosing a narrow center of gravity. So there's another one here, another CRM, another one that I was looking at the time, because obviously as a founder, I needed to look at where I can do the phone calls from and where can I manage the leads. Then I found Close.com. So Close.com is another great one. It also pouts the same things. It's really good if you're getting on the dials, good if you're getting on the SMS, and good if you're getting on the email, and good for doing pipeline. So why was it still not the choice for me? Close showed me a different version of the CRM category. Instead of making the CRM the home for every agency function, it puts the daily sales actions at the centre. Calling, email, SMS, task sequences, and pipeline movement belong close together when the team's main bottleneck is execution. So that focus can be more valuable for a larger bundle because it removes distractions from the work the salesperson has to do next. For us, the question remained whether sales execution was the entire operating model or one process connected to research, knowledge, content, and technical services. That difference because a focused sales CRM and a buildable business system solve related problems, but they are not trying to be the same product. So when I'm sitting there looking at these two products, it's good to look at them side by side, close and go high level, two great CRMs for the type of person that they're for. I'm still not that person. So Close described itself as a sales CRM for calling, emailing, texting, automation, and action. That focus makes sense when a team needs to spend less time moving between communication tools and more time progressing real opportunities. It also made the comparison clear for me. Close is optimized around sales execution, Go High Level is optimized around broader agency growth systems. Neither of those positions make the product wrong. They simply place the center of gravity somewhere different. Our company needed commercial activity, but also needed a flexible internal model for research, workflows, content, knowledge, and infrastructure, and AI. At that point, I stopped asking which CRM had the longest feature list and started asking which system would let us own the part of the business that made us different. The decision came down to a trade-off between package convenience and buildable control. Package systems provide strong defaults, integrated features, and less assembly. A buildable system creates more responsibility, but also gives the company more authority over the data model, workflows, missions, and integrations. A feature checklist hides that trade because it treats every checkbox as equally important. For us, the differentiator increasingly lives in the process and the code we owned. I am a software developer, first and foremost, and sometimes I do sales. It's one of those things where if you're a founder, you're probably in the same boat as me. I want something that I can configure to how I work. I want to use AI agents like I use Hermes agent, like I used OpenClaw, like I use Pi, like I use OpenCode, like I use all of these CLI tools to be able to code, do go to market, be able to find the leads, be able to qualify the leads, be able to do research on the leads, and I need to have a place where all that information is able to be stored. I want to be able to configure the thing that I'm working on. Just the same way as I can configure my website to be able to look the way I want it, the same way I can be able to configure how I'm able to do marketing for my website. I want to be able to have configuration. But the thing about this here, and being a software developer, and also looking for a way to be able to build relationships, is you have to look at it through a new lens, okay? We need to define what a prospect meant, which evidence belonged on the record, how an AI agent could propose work, and which service can make a verified right. That was the point where I found this new software, and my friend Martin was like, why are you choosing that? I've never heard of that before. Because it made sense for me. This is where I found 20. So 20 is a CRM because it has more than another option of just being a CRM. It looked like a foundation we could shape around the company we are actually building. So what is 20, right? 20 presented the CRM as something a technical team could shape around its own business. That matched what I had been searching for in the open source CRM community. So I found a few other ones that I had seen there and they just didn't look good. I care about aesthetics. I don't know if you've seen the website. I think it looks all right, but it could look a little bit better. But I care about those kind of things. I care about visually being able to see, does it make sense? Like, can I bring someone who has no idea into the software and say, this is what you need to do, this is your task, complete this task correctly, don't make any mistakes, and not just an AI agent, like an actual person. So when I was looking at this here, this ticked all the boxes. We still needed people, companies, tasks, and opportunities, but we also needed prospects, knowledge, we needed standard operating procedures, content, workflows, model health, and developer-facing integrations. 20 did not remove the work of designing those things. It gave us a foundation where the design could become durable. That distinction mattered to me personally. I also, consulted with my co-founders about it, and they said, you just choose that, you know what you're talking about. So I looked at it, it made sense, so I started to use it. Customization was not changing colors or moving a field. It was the ability to represent the business honestly as the company changed. The more I understood the platform, the more the CRM looked like a modular core: objects and relationships for truth, APIs for controlled access, workflows for processes, and then AI providers for inference. The architecture we built around Twenty has a simple separation of responsibilities. Business objects hold durable state, relationships explain how records connect, APIs that control services read and write, workflows coordinate bounded processes, AI providers supply inference without becoming the business database. Those boundaries are important because flexibility without rules quickly become chaos. We still needed a data dictionary, ownership rules, lifecycle states, permissions, retries, and verification. The benefit is that those decisions can live in a system we control and we can inspect. That is also why Twenty's public argument about owning the code and data resonated with me. The problem was not asking us to believe that AI would magically fix sales. It was arguing that an AI era CRM needs a business model that the company itself can continue to shape. Objects, relationships, APIs, and workflows are the foundations of being able to build my own CRM. Everybody nowadays is building a CRM in some capacity. I see a lot of people are building CRMs and selling them to people. I see a lot of people building tools to be able to work with a CRM that they already have, but they never have a good starting point, and that's what Twenty looked like to me. Twenty's own explanation describes a shift from CRM as a passive ledger toward an operating system that people and agents can work through. The part I found useful was not a claim that AI automatically fixes sales and everything else. It was a need for durable context. What is true? What an agent may change, where a result belongs. When the company owns the surrounding model, it can revise fields, workflows, and integrations. So as it learns, instead of waiting for a vendor's assumption to catch up, that brought the story back to the problem. I was building a sourcing company at the time. Now I'm building an AI platform. So when I had the sourcing company and now that I have the AI platform, I still use the same technology because in my head, a composable, editable, and codable system is something better than having, which is vendor locked, that you have to pay $169 for just to get access to a phone call. I don't need that. I need a system that I can grow with and change as I go. So we needed a system that preserved judgment rather than erasing it between tools. And in practice, that meant connecting prospects, tasks, knowledge, content, and workflows around the same business context. So that is how the CRM became a form of business memory for us. A prospect record mattered when it preserves why the company was selected. A task matters when it has an owner and a next action. Knowledge matters when you sit there and do the work to be able to understand who the person was who brought it in. An AI agent can bring in a lead, but they'll tell you all the research as well along with it. All of these things can be turned into fields inside of an object that you're able to inspect, and the AI agent is great at reading objects because it's got an SQL backend. So all of the things that are stored make sense with context. So all of these things came down to why I decided it. And knowledge matters when a repeated decision can be reused. Content matters when it connects to the source and commercial purpose that produced it. A workflow matters when it runs outputs that can be inspected. The value is not the number of objects in the sidebar, it's the relationship between them. Those relationships stop the company from rebuilding context in every inbox, spreadsheet, and agent session. Even in Twenty's developer documentation, then explain how that idea extends beyond records through apps, APIs, self-hosting, and contribution. Okay, so Twenty documents 4 ways to build around the platform. So you've got apps. This extends the system with custom objects, server-side logic, interface components, and agent capabilities. The API exposes records and metadata through the REST and GraphQL, right? So with webhooks and OAuth integrations. Self-hosting gives teams control over deployment. And contributing keeps the underlying project open. Okay, so this company here was invested in by Salesforce. I think they put I don't remember off the top of my head, it's like $3 million or something like that. An open source CRM, which is competing against their own product, gets $3 million from the person who made it. Obviously it's coded, right? Obviously it's coded. There's a reason why it's free and it's open source, because people can come into it, build on top of it, grow it. And if the likelihood that this does turn into a commercial success, there's the people there who helped form at the beginning. And I've actually was there when it was first starting out, and it was really great to see these things here. So it's a system that is great, but the thing about this here project and the fact that it's open isn't just the only thing that's good about it. The documentation is why our use of 20 is not merely for UI configuration story. It is a software system decision, but technical capability still needs a clear owner. Someone has to decide which fields count as evidence, which state transitions are valid, what a workflow may change, and what verification make an outcome true. In a founder-led company, that authority begins with the founder and then becomes explicit enough to delegate the task off. So the governance rule is very, very, very easy to understand here, and I don't really want to get into too nitty-gritties on it, but I can explain it to you from this perspective. I do not want an agent become an invisible employee with a private database and undocumented assumptions. I want it to work against a business model. I can inspect and I can revise. An agent may research, classify, summarize, draft, or propose a task. A workflow may coordinate the next step. A controlled service may execute a side effect. But the founder defines which fields count as evidence, which state transitions are valid, and what verification makes an outcome true. This is not about clicking every button personally. It is about making authority explicit enough that work can be delegated safely. The live prospect surface is where the principle becomes concrete records rather than an abstract governance diagram. So if I go into my one, I can show you it here and then you'll be able to understand this here a little bit better. The world may as well be your oyster. So I'll give you an example. So here's my GitHub PRs. This is all the work that we've got here inside of it. We've got loads of different systems there that are there to show us what's going on, who's the person who owns it. We've got a prospect list as well. We've got 1,700 prospects inside of here, by the way, right? And all of these are not always right, but that's because of our workflows needing to be polished up. But we've got so many other things. We've got knowledge entries. These are things that whenever we're using our coding tools, they're able to go into a file and read what is going on. Like, they're able to understand exactly what it is that we're building. We've also got dev tools as well. These are ones that I'm actually going to be building on recently here because I want to contribute my project into open source projects. So part of our go-to-market strategy is to speak to people who are maintaining open source software and then sponsoring them so that they can get a little bit of money or get a little bit of credits to be able to build what they're doing. Everyone's using AI nowadays, so why not use us? You know what I mean? So that's been another example. We've got so many other ones. We've got literally so many things that you can sit here and do. People, opportunities, tasks. The way I use tasks is I use tasks synced up with my Pi. So what will happen is that when I open up a thing called a TBD, which is called a bead, it will then create a bead, and then that bead will then be pushed into there, and then that will be create a task, and then that's the task that I need to go through and do. So you can see there's go-to-market stuff here, for example. This here is just clearly a task. So operational go-to-market engineering task. Plan sign up welcome, no usage reminder, low balance nudge, zero balance win back, and model announcements. Live sends remain blocked until sender credential and deliverability are provided or proven, right? So like that's like this is like a perfect example that I can get an agent to read this information and document where along in the process it is. It's great. I love it. It's so cool to be able to just configure something and then like it works in the way that you want. And it comes out of the box like this. There is not one way to use it. There's many a way to use it. And each way that you do it is just different than the last one. For example, here is our CMS. So from here, I can post content directly to my website just from having it embedded into an iframe inside of a workspace on the left-hand side. What an interesting thing. I wish it would load here. It's just I'm on the Mac, so it's a little bit slow. But it's just interesting that I can have so much composability over what it is I'm building. Back to what I was saying, a controlled service may execute a side effect, but the founder defines which fields count as evidence, which state transitions are valid, and what verification makes an outcome true. Okay? It is about making authority explicit enough that work can be delegated safely. The live prospect surface is where the principle becomes concrete records rather than an abstract governance diagram. So what I was trying to say to you here is this. So inside of here, if I go to my data model, I can actually see everything going on inside of my CRM just from visualizing it here. So like what, like this is to me, this is just so interesting. Like I can literally go and see what is going on, and I can make it as complex or I can make it as normal as possible. But this is what we're talking about here. The fact that I'm able to visualize this and then have an agent go in and do the work to be able to understand it even better than me, like that's insane. So prospecting eventually became a first-class business service inside our workspace. So the research process from an operating source can now produce durable records instead of disappearing into an exported list. A prospect can carry why it was selected, its domain, the discovery source, whether a meeting route was found, its life cycle, and the workflows that acted upon it. So you can see this is the sources where it came from. Here's some other ones. Has it got a booking meeting on their website? This is here as part of another workflow where I have an agent that will go on to the website and book a meeting directly for me. So if you've found this video from me speaking to you, an agent was using 20 to then go and start a workflow to then contact you. This is the age that we're living in right now, and I think that's just so interesting. So all of these fields are there for me to be able to understand who you are, where you came from, and what extra notes I need to have on you before I go into a meeting for you. If you've got to book a meeting, can I book a meeting with you? If you don't, I can send you an email. These kind of things here are just part of what we're talking about here. It also gives an agent a bounded place to read from and return proposal to. So research is still only the beginning. Once the system decides something should happen, responsibility has to become visible, and that is where tasks and explicit capability contracts either enter or don't enter into your process. So we apply the same contract idea beyond AI models. A capability is not just a name, it needs an identity, limits, permitted inputs, expected outputs, economics, and an owner. For models, that includes context window, output limits, modalities, reasoning support, and price metadata. For services, it includes authentication, timeout behavior, and the record fields that may change. This prevents a workflow from treating every tool as interchangeable. It also keeps unknown metadata from becoming invented certainly. So once the contract is explicit, the next action can be assigned to a human or a bounded process. That is what turns a suggested follow-up into an observable task, rather than another sentence inside an agent conversation. So, tasks. These are things, like I had explained to you there before, are where suggested work becomes an owned next action. So, a model can propose a follow-up, a workflow can create the task, and a person can own the decision. The record keeps the next step visible to the company rather than hiding it inside a generator response. So that matters in outbound customer work, content operations, and also programming. A task can link back to the prospect, an opportunity, or a process that explains why it exists. So everything that you see here, these are all of the things that I'm doing with my agent. So the agent goes, does the work inside of my code base, uploads the stuff to the task, then the task gets put down. The task then creates a thing inside of our knowledge base. The knowledge base then takes the context of what we've got, it runs against the context of that there, and then it adds in there. And then now, if someone was to come in and work on the same project with us later stage and a better AI model comes out, they know what we're building. They can see everything I've done, all the things that have actually been completed, all the things that we've deleted, why, what it is, and what we're doing. It just gives a better idea to a model to be able to how to do tasks for me. So tasks give individual actions a durable home. Repeatable chains still need orchestration, and which is why the workflow layer became the next part of the system we had to make visible. So an agent system needs more than just a model. The model supplies inference, like what we do with inference over here. So if you want to try and get access to models, you're going to need an inference provider. I'm an API provider, inference provider. Come to us. We can give you access to models at up to 70% off. But that's not the context that we're talking here. The CRM supplies durable business context. A bounded service owns the capability required for a side effect. The result returns to the record that explains what happened. That separation also protects the host. So 20 workflows work in a certain way. They use code runs inside of the 20 environment and can make controlled HTTP requests. So while host-side browser, media, or specialized servers remain behind explicit boundaries, the workflow coordinates business state rather than receiving unlimited machine access. So once we accessed it, and then once we applied that understanding and structure to what we're doing, the process stopped looking like invisible scripts. Discovery, enrichment, emailing, booking link finding, classification, and content work. All of this here could be named and then inspect it inside of it. So instead of just saying all these files do these tasks for our business, anyone can go in and look at our business and they'll understand what it's doing. So our workflow table now makes the operating model visible. There are named processes for discovery, enrichment, booking link finding, email sending, video work, niche classification, lookalike discovery, newsletters, and other parts of the business. A named workflow can be a versioned run, inspected, and related to records it touch, but an active badge is not proof that an external side effect succeeded. We still need to run evidence, service responses, and the receiving record. That verification boundary is part of the product. The table proves that the process exists in the CRM. It doesn't just not justify unsupported claims about delivery. So it also leaves room for specialized systems to remain execution channels when they're better suited for that part of the work. So the comparison did not lead us to declare go high level or close are completely irrelevant, right? They're two bits of great software. They are great at what they do. A sales team may use close for calls and communication. A team may use go high level for its agency motion, but 20 can remain our internal control plane if the integration defines ownership clearly. Which systems own the identifier? Which systems own the lifecycle state? Does an upcoming event create, update, or request review? How are retries made, right? Those questions matter more than forcing every person into one interface. Supporting that architecture requires documented interfaces rather than ad hoc synchronization. So 20's API documentation makes the boundary concrete by explaining how workspace objects receive REST and GraphQL endpoints. And that's one of the parts here that I really want to go into, because once you get into the data model part of this here, it starts to make a little bit more sense, and it also makes your life way more easier if you can get an AI to do it. So 20 generates its API from the workspace schema. Built-in and custom objects can be exposed through REST and GraphQL. So the core API handles records and relationships. The metadata API handles objects, fields, and relations. That gives control services a real interface for reading business context and writing verified results to the correct record. It also means an integration can synchronize only the fields it owns instead of copying the entire CRM blindly. So APIs do not create good architecture by themselves, but they make ownership enforceable. And from there, we use the same verification run for every integration. So inspect the real capability, configure verified metadata and permissions, and make a bounded test, observe the run and server's response, and inspect the destination record before declaring the work complete. So the verification loop is deliberately unglamorous. First inspect the real capability, catalog or API, then configure only verified metadata and permissions. Make one bounded test call, observe the workflow run and receiving service. Finally inspect the destination record. The same loop applies to AI providers. So outbound services and CRM synchronization, an active badge does not prove an email was delivered. A successful HTTP response does not prove the correct record changed. A model name does not prove its limits or prices, but verification connects the visible configuration to the business outcome. So the APIs and webhook surfaces is where those external write paths are managed separately from the AI provider configuration. So the APIs and webhooks area is the boundary for the services that need to cross the 20's record or events. So if I go inside my one here, so if I go here, so the API and also here. So inside of it, you're able to have MCPs, you're able to have webhooks, and you're also able to have APIs. So these here are all connected up in some way or another to then be able to take the information and then do something with it. So on the business side, right, integration can use documented endpoints and webhooks, preserve identifiers, and return verified outcomes. On the inference side, the model registry describes model capabilities and limits. Together, those boundaries connect records, tasks, knowledge, and workflows, and inference without forcing the operating truth back into a hidden agent context. So this is why I'm saying to you guys, it's important for you to look into this, because if it's so composable in the manner of how you're able to interact with it, think about it like an AI agent would. How are they going to be able to interact with it? An AI agent doesn't sign into the front end. It connects to an API, to an MCP. It has a CLI tool to be able to query things. That's how agents work. And if you have your business centered around something that allows that to happen, You can use Claude Code, Codex, OpenCode, Pi, Hermes, OpenClaw, any of these agents, and then they're actually able to do real, trackable, and also repeatable work. So this final render system is not meant to claim that one tool does everything. It shows the relationship we built. Okay, so 20 holds durable business context. Prospects preserve research, tasks preserve ownership, workflows contain processes, APIs connect to specialized services, and Inference Saver supplies model access. So the founder defines authority and verification. So that is why 20 fits so well with what we're doing with Inference Saver. We have access to models, we have access to capital, we've got access to information, we've got access to MCPs, we've got access to a lot of things here that people just take for granted, right? Like, you can build what you want now without the thinking of this isn't going to work. So why do you not use your AI to then build systems that you can control to then be able to create great business? It just makes sense. The founder defines the authority and verification, and that's why 20 works for us. The company itself was still being built, so the CRM had remained buildable too. So when I'm looking here at this last slide I've presented here, right, that's because I'm trying to get it through to you right now. Show the actual AI administration services that implemented one part of this architecture. We will use those to capture and to explain exactly where the provider lives. So what the model form requires and why unknown model metadata must remain unsaved rather than invented. So these are already rendered and live right now. So if I were to go in and show you another interesting part of it, as an AI gateway provider, we have access to these models, and this is an open source piece of software. So you take an API platform that allows you to get access to cheaper models, you get a buildable system like a CRM like 20, and you can literally use them together, and that's what's good about having composable systems. So if I were to go here, right, and to look at my AI, so inside of the AI, right, I can literally see the models that we've got here, right? So look, I've got Inference Saver here with all the models that I've got, right? I can go in and literally open up a new chat and speak with AI inside of here. So I can add my own gateway provider into this software and then use my own thing that I built with my CRM, and then I know that I'm doing what I'm doing. To me, that's what makes this software so much better than other places, and it's what you can sit there and look at here. It makes no sense not to use 20 for us anyways. So we began at the very beginning there of thinking, why should we choose go high level, why we should go and use close, or why we should go use a 20. If you're a software developer first and you also try to do sales second, you need to have a ledger of business where your work will be done. And if you use AI agents, there's no other better way than saving money on your AI by using us, but also having a free open source CRM that you can host on your own device, on your own virtual server, and retain and control everything inside of it. What you can do with 20 is literally what your brain is able to do anywhere, right? You can go to any software and then be vendor locked to using their AI that you have to pay an extremely marked up price for. Or you can make the logical and sound decision for what you're building with your friends, your company, you're built by yourself. This is where my business happens. This is how I use AI inside of it. And this is why we're going to be able to do these things. I can say to you now, personally, I love 20. I also love building Inference Saver. So to have both of these two things together just really, really was no brainer for me. So if you are to choose a CRM, honestly, 20 is not a bad one to have a look at. What I'm trying to get through to everybody here is that building nowadays, there is no limitations. Having the business information is one place, but having understanding of the business relationship is another. If you're one of those people there who are trying to do go to market, trying to do outbound sales, trying to get prospects, book meetings, I'm actually making a Discord server for people who are like that. So founders, builders, software developers, solo developers, vibe coders, all of these boys can come and click on the link in the bio, and from that there, you're able to speak with other people who are building things right now and are actually getting things done. I know for a fact that from what I've built, there are are people out there who are saving money with AI access. So we speak to agencies all the time, and they are always looking at what's the best CRM, what's the best dialer, what's the best tool. There's no better place to try and get this resource and get this information by not joining a community. So if you're not having anyone to bounce ideas off, you can go to the link in the bio and speak with other people who are doing what you're trying to do, because it's better to build together rather than to build alone. We can build walls around ourselves, but those walls will help us protect ourselves, but it also won't let us get out. As founders, I know most people have a fear of speaking to other people, but starting today, you can start doing things to get that business coming in, and it's free. So why do you not just go and do it? Download 20, go and click on the link in the bio and join our Discord server, and also sign up for Inference Saver and get access to AI models for cheaper prices, because I know I'm a solo builder. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if there's anyone who has any questions, really don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much for everybody for watching. I'm Matthew from Inference Saver. Bye bye.